So from the upcoming, such a pleasure to have you here with us. I was hearing you in another interview say that your way of sort of finding the core of this character is actually seeing him as a sociopath. So can you talk about how you played him and how also him falling in love actually forms the anchor of a lot of the character in the show?
Yeah, I think, the thing is I was talking to somebody who works within the industry, and we were talking about the character, and he was like, well, I said, is he a sociopath? And he was like, well, I think he pretty much is. And then he sent me a checklist of, what would define a sociopath. And, Martian, ticked a lot of the boxes. So, of course, then you think to yourself, oh, it was kind of obvious. It's sort of like a sociopath in crisis. He's trying to find, rediscover the humanity within himself, trying to save his soul. And then I started to, really realize that it was those two characters, Samia, his love interest. He spent 6 years in Ethiopia. He's created a life with her, and then his daughter, who he hasn't seen for most of her young adult life. Those two women in his life, I feel like they're sort of, fighting for his soul. That's the way I kind of looked at it. I mean, I try to understand. Just spend a lot of time reading the script, spending a lot of time with the writing, and then trying to put some sort of biography together, where the character comes from, why they would get into a profession like this in the first place, and then where they started off fresh-faced in this kind of world, and how, where they're at, where we find this character now, how it's affected their life. Especially with this character, because he's so efficient at what he does. How does he deal with real relationships in his life in the real world? Very charming man. He's Richard Gere. He's a superstar. And yeah, just a joy to work with. I mean, the whole cast, I think, we're spoiled for such talent. But it was a real honor and privilege to work with him for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good question because Alicia and I watched the original series, I think, in 2018, 2019. I could only get the first 2 seasons. For some reason, we couldn't manage to get it on whatever apps we were trying to get it on. But the first 2 seasons, I was super intrigued. And actually, one of the rare times where I was watching something where I thought, I wonder how I would take that on. And I wonder, I'd like to have a go at that character. So yeah, I was a big fan of it, and then it was sort of like having seen it, and what I loved about what Matthew did with the character is, these sort of people shouldn't stand up too much in life. It should be a little bit like a wallpaper, this character, but then there's also something very intriguing about them. So that was something I think Matthew did really well. There was a sort of element to that character where you would underestimate him. You wouldn't see him as a threat. So I thought that was an interesting element, and an element to sort of hold on to. But then I don't really know. I don't really intellectualize so much about what's going on. I just spend a lot of time with the script, repeat it many, many, many times, and then it just starts to, seep into the skin and the bones. It takes over itself, really. Perhaps how you started off as sort of maybe through ideology or an idealist, and then once you're in it, what it becomes in reality, and how it takes your life over. I think the thing with this character is he's very good at what he does, and I think his personality type suits that. How does he manage the relationships truthfully in his life?